Welcome. In this exercise, which is exercise 1, we're going to take a look at some of the introductory functionality inside CREO Parametric Modeling version 2.0. So let's take a look. First of all, our goal while we're doing this is to create a 3D model similar to what you see up here on the screen. And it's just basically a rectangle with a hole in it and a boss sticking out of it. So let's begin. When you first start up CREO, make sure you click on this little X in the corner of this Welcome dialog box. And now we just go to File, New. Make sure Part is selected, the type is going to be solid, and name this capital E1 and hit OK. Now some of the settings that might benefit your screen or your visual enhancements that are very helpful can be found under the File and Options menu. This is basically the options for pretty much everything inside CREO. So you have your environments, your system colors, model display, entity display. So the things I like to personally turn on are, for example, under entity display, I turn on high quality edges. So high or very high, as well as shaded with edges. It makes it much easier to see the edges on the model. Tangent edge display, just keep that at solid. And anti-aliasing, which smooths out the screen. This is really dependent upon your graphics card, but essentially you can change it to maybe 2 for, I have mine set up to 8x because I have a very powerful graphics card. But if it slows things down, set it to either off or 2x, and that will help just smooth out the screen. And then you could click on Show Smooth Lines. That also is kind of like an anti-aliasing. We also have Show Datum Planes while rotating. Okay, and Show Datum Plane Tags. I like to turn that on as well. As far as some of the other options on here, I think that's pretty good for right now. There's also Model Display. I prefer isometric versus trimetric, but that's preference. You don't have to do that necessarily. Also, if you want to see the orientation center, that's a preference. I don't really need to see that, but I'll leave it on. And then also on here, you can set the shaded quality up higher if you like. Anything beyond 10, it starts getting really, really clear. That might be good for a rendering, but you don't necessarily need it. So 3, anywhere between 3 and 10 is pretty good. Okay, show surface features. Shade very small surfaces. That helps improve the visual graphics. It slows it down a bit when you rotate, but it can actually make it look a lot better when you're working in it. Again, I have a somewhat powerful graphics card in the system, so I have mine set up a little higher than normal. All right, there's other options in there as well. For right now, though, if you go to the very bottom, if you wanted to save this, you could export the configurations and save it, give it a name, and then you could bring them up again or have it come up automatically. It will actually prompt you for that. Otherwise, if you just want to set up for this particular one, you can just hit OK. And this is where it actually sometimes it gives you this option, this configuration. Do you want to save this configuration file? Yes or no? I'm going to go ahead and hit yes for future use. And here's where you could actually save it off to a specific area. I'm just going to go ahead and hit OK. All right, now what we want to do is we're going to go ahead and go to the select the front plane, and this is the feature tree on the left-hand side. So go ahead and select that, and then you could go ahead and find the sketch tool right in the middle. We're on the Model tab, just so you know, and you could click on Sketch and begin sketching this way. Now, sometimes it might orient itself normal to the plane you're sketching on. Otherwise, you might get this. If you wanted to rotate it manually, you have options to do that. Right below here, there's this AB button, which means Name Views. You click on that, and you could click on the front view orientation, and it will rotate you to that. Now, I'm going to go ahead and select the Corner Rectangle tool. Typically, when you see a little arrow to the right of any tool, you'll see that there's several other options. We just want Corner Rectangle. And glide up to the center, and you could zoom in and out with your middle scroll. If you scroll in and out, you can zoom up to that. Click and drag out a rectangle. Now be careful, you don't want these little L's. Notice when I get to a certain point where it's actually square, you get L and L, little green L's. Those can be helpful under certain circumstances, but what it's doing is making these all equal lengths, and then we're going to be tied down to that. This is supposed to be a rectangle, so we don't want that. We just want the H's and V's, which stand for horizontal and vertical relations. Click, and then middle click 2 times on the scroll button. You actually don't scroll, you just click on it like a third mouse button 2 times, and it will bring up the dimensions for that. And we want to actually shrink this down considerably to 3 inches wide. You just double click on the dimension, hit enter, and then double click on this dimension with the left mouse button. This is going to be 5 and hit enter, and you will see it will automatically zoom to fit that on the screen once those dimensions have been changed. Again, with your middle mouse button, you see you could actually rotate. If you don't like to see your planes, you don't always need them to be on, so over here you could turn on the filter to show or hide certain things. In this case, I don't want to see the planes. I don't really need to see the CSYS. The rest of these things are okay. We'll leave those on for right now. Okay, now I'm going to go and you hit OK when you're done with the sketch, the green check mark in the upper right here. Now you could go to Model. Oh, actually, we're already in Model, sorry. And you click on Extrude. Extrude right in the middle here. Now, down here, you can actually double click on this dimension and type in 0.5. Otherwise, you could type it in up here as well. Just make sure that it's extruding as a solid. You don't want extrude as a surface, then it's just open in the center. So you want extrude as solid, 0.5, and then you can just hit the green check mark to apply. In this case, I didn't hit enter to update it, so it's very easy to change. I'm going to double click on this front surface, find that dimension that didn't get updated, and double click on it and just type in 0.5 and hit enter, and it will update it automatically. So there's a couple different solutions there. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and I'm going to hit escape here a couple times to get out of that editing tool. And now I want to go ahead and start building a block on the front of this. So you could go up to Sketch up here, click on it, and then select the surface you want to sketch on. In this case, actually, I had it pre-selected, so it went ahead and yeah. So now I could go ahead and I'm going to actually draw a rectangle. So I'm going to go back to corner rectangle. Now you can draw this with lines too. There's the line tool too. You could click on and drag across, but we'll just use rectangles to start off with. So click on this lower left-hand corner and drag out a rectangle. Now you might notice that it doesn't really snap to the edge on the other side, which in fact we do want it to snap to that. So just have it go up a little short of it or a little bit beyond it. Either one is fine. I'm going to draw a little short of that edge. And then middle click 2 times. Now you get the dimensions, so we get the height and width. You could type in an explicit value for the width, 3 inches, then it would be equal. But that kind of goes against the whole premise of parametric modeling. You want everything to update together, especially if you know the design intent was to actually have both update or be the same width. So we'll leave that width alone for a second, and I'll show you a solution for that. But this needs to be 1.5, so that's for the height. Now the solution, rather than supplying a dimension, we could actually substitute a constraint. And up here we have the constraints. In this case, we're looking for the one that looks kind of like a little eye. It's the coincident constraint. Go ahead and select that. Select this edge, and then select the edge of the actual model. And you'll see it will constrain to that edge. And so those constraints come in very handy. Notice the dimension disappeared because it's no longer needed because the constraint is based off of the base model here, the 3x5 rectangle. And so if we ever change that dimension, like from 3 to 4 wide, both features update, the base as well as this front. Again, that's what they call design intent. Now I'm going to just hit the OK tool, and I'm going to go to the extrude button again, and again type in 0.5. Hit enter. If you hit enter a second time on your keyboard, it will update automatically. And now we have our model. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is click on Sketch again and select this face to sketch on. Now this little sketch dialog box pops up. I forgot to mention that earlier. When you click on that, it allows you to rotate or select different objectives or edges for referencing. And that would be referencing your default dimensions. We're just going to hit Sketch, so don't select anything in particular other than the Sketch button here and get past that. In the intro class, we don't really use that much. In the advanced class, we start to see it and we use it and we see its advantages that we have with more advanced topics. But for right now, let's just move on here. So we're sketching on this surface, so you can now take the center and point tool, which is a circle tool essentially, glide up to this upper left quadrant. Now if you prefer, again, you could go to the AB button and go to front. This might be helpful. And so the upper left quadrant, click and drag out a circle, and the middle click a couple times. And you'll get the dimensions to appear. Some of these we want, some of them we don't really want. According to the book, we actually want this one right here, and we're going to make that an offset of 1 inch from the left edge. Now this, actually, technically, we could type in 4 and it'd be done. Notice it is a weak dimension. Weak dimensions mean that if we add another dimension in its place, it will disappear and go away. Versus if we double click and change the value to 4, it will turn it to a strong dimension, or you could right click and turn it to a strong dimension as well. You see here, I can select strong. I don't want it to be strong though. If you ever get a dimension that's strong, you just simply click on it, hit delete, and it will turn it weak. It doesn't delete the dimension, it just turns it weak, so watch this. Now we could go to the dimension tool up here, which is just called normal, creates dimensions that reference at least one sketch entity. Click on that. Select the center point of your circle, and select the top edge of the model. And then middle click over here on the left. Middle clicking allows you to add the dimension. And go ahead and type in, that's the middle on the, if you have a scroll, if you don't have a third mouse button, the scroll acts as a third mouse button if you push it down. Don't scroll it. Okay, type in 1 and hit enter. Lay your dimensions out so that they look pretty decent. You can middle click a couple times to get out of the dimension tool. But lay these out. Oh, and I forgot to change this dimension. Double click on this, and this will be 0.75 for the diameter. Again, laying the dimensions out while you're in the sketches helps out later on when someone or yourself has to detail and make a blueprint of this, because the dimensions could be extracted from this model and put directly into the drawing versus redimensioning everything or having to lay them out to look nicer. So this saves some time down the road. Let's go to model. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, we still have to stay in sketch. I forgot to hit the green check mark. Make sure you hit OK to apply. Now we could go ahead and click on extrude. And we could see here the extrusion is going the wrong direction. So up here, if we take a look at some of the options, first of all, there is a flip switch right here, change the direction. There's also that little arrow you could click on, and that will change it as well, right in the center. But one other thing we need to do is remove the material. So you have to select this icon up here, which is to remove the material during the extrude. One other factor, design intent. If this is intended to go through every time, even if the thickness of the plate changes, use the through all option, which is right here, which extrudes to intersect with all surfaces. You can hit the green check mark if you see a decent preview. Remember, you could always rotate around to make sure it's not extruding the wrong direction. Otherwise, if it's extruding the wrong direction, it could possibly give you an error. Hit the green check mark. And that's pretty much it for this exercise. But I'd like to show you, if you wanted to play around, play with some of the tools. We'll get to these in the next couple of weeks, but there's the round tool. Watch this. You could click on edges. It's just like you're going to file down an edge and put a round on it. Another name is a fillet, or some people call it blend. There's a radius. Click on this edge here, and you'll see you'll get two little handles, little white handles that turn black when you grip them. Drag with the left mouse button to press, and you can put in radiuses. And you could change or double click on these dimensions to put in explicit values and update them. Hit the green check mark. There's also the chamfer tool. You could click on chamfer. You could have a distance to distance, or angle to distance, or 45-degree angle to distance, and then select the edge and make sure it's a smaller size here. In this case, I'm going to go with 0.1, and we can see the preview and select this edge as well. And that puts an angle on it versus a blend as a radius. And one last thing, which we'll touch upon more in the future, is the shell command. If you click on shell up here, set the thickness to 0.06, hit enter, and then select, holding control on your keyboard, these three faces on the back side. And you can remove those, making an enclosure. And now that would be like a plastic part enclosure or something. Anyhow, that's about it for this exercise. Let me just go to the labs now and show you a way you can do the labs. Now, a spoiler alert, typically the labs are reserved for you to try your best to model them. And I normally suggest maybe trying to give them a shot before watching the cheat video, which I'm going to show you here in just a second. So if you don't want to watch this, or just pause it maybe and try and give it a try. There's two labs in there, and you can see how the Pro Engineer, or actually CREO in this case, works really well to model that, and challenge yourself. Otherwise, watch the video if you need a little bit of help, and then go ahead and build it. So I'm going to start with a new part here, and I'm going to call this L1 and hit OK. I just have to downsize my screen a little bit here. Fits in the recording area. Okay, now with this part, let's take a look. They're actually in the book. In the manual, they should be on page, first one should be on page here, maybe around 22, and it should look like this. And our goal is to make that block that you see there. So let me just show you some tips and tricks for this one. Select the front plane and start a sketch by clicking on your sketch tool here. So I selected the front plane in the feature tree, click on sketch, and if you want, remember you could go to the AB button and go to the front if it doesn't automatically orient you there. I'm going to drag out a rectangle here, and I'm going to try and center it. I'm just eyeballing it, then middle click a couple times. Now what you're going to do here, because you see there's 4 dimensions that appear. We have an overall width, an overall length, and 2 mid area widths and lengths. Remember that. If this didn't turn out right, just click across, select everything, and hit delete on your keyboard. You can try it again. A corner rectangle, and just right in the center, just try and drag a rectangle out. Now there is a center rectangle. If you want, you can actually try that. And this will work really well for our model. But to do that, make sure that your display is turned on. Hold on a second, let me cancel this. Okay, again, I'm going to select the front plane, start my sketch, and now I could use the center rectangle tool. Click and drag out a rectangle. Make sure you don't get equal lengths, those little L's or those perpendicular symbols that appear. Stay away from those. That means it's going to make it square. This is supposed to be a rectangle. Click. And then go ahead and make this the same size as the exercise. It will be 3 by 5. Just double click on the dimensions. You don't have to type in 5.0. You could actually just type in 3 and hit enter. Alright, now that we have it centered, we could also draw in some center points, or some circles, because there's some bosses that are going to go in here. So you could click on one side here, and then over here you could align to it, drag another one out, and the T equals that it's tangent, so you want to stay away from tangent, but you do want R and R. That means it's making those 2 circles equal. And again, you could align yourself with the R, and then here you could align yourself to both, get the R again, so they're all equal sizes. Now if you didn't get those all with the little R's in there for radius meaning equal. You could use the equal symbol up here. You could click on that and select all of them and hit enter, and then it will actually apply that to those. But in this case, we're looking pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and drag these dimensions out. Remember, lay them out like you're laying out a print. It should look all nice and even. If we look at the print here, the diameter for this, actually I'm going to rotate this. It's a rectangle and it has 4 holes on it. So here we want to make sure that we got their 0.5 and 0.75 offset. So if we go back to CREO, so this is going to be 0.5, 0.75 by 0.75. This as well is be 0.75. Now there is mirroring and there's patterning available. We're very early in this class, so we haven't gone through that. So right now, just give yourself some practice and put in those dimensions manually like that. Okay, now they're all same. Now we could go ahead and we could go to OK and extrude. And this gets extruded 1.5 thick. And you could hit the green check mark to apply. Now we could start another sketch on the front face of this. And I'm going to go to AB front. And again, we could use our center rectangle tool to draw this out. Now notice we're not capturing the edge again. Remember the trick to that. Drag it close to it, a little bit distance away, then middle click a couple times. Now you could go to the equal tool, or not equal, I'm sorry, the little eyeball. It looks like coincident. It looks like a little eyeball. Click on that. Select this edge, either the top or the bottom, it doesn't matter, and then the closest edge to it on the actual solid. And then it aligns itself to it. All right, and let's check the print. So we're going to be at 1.5 centered. So let's go ahead and go to the normal tool, which is for dimensioning. Select the top line, middle click on your mouse button. That middle, look at the middle mouse. Make sure it's that scroll. You push it down like it's a mouse button. This is going to be 1.5. And now we go to extrude. Actually, hit OK. Extrude. Now we want to remove material, so click on remove material, and you have to flip it so it pushes in. Now this is too deep. You could grab this little black dot here and drag it around. It's actually a white dot, white square. Then when you click on it, it turns black. But this needs to actually go 1 inch deep. So you could click on that and hit the green check mark. And then you're done. Again, have a little fun with that. Play with the rounds a little bit. Click on the corners, put some rounds in there. You could go to the chamfer tool, put some chamfers on the edges, put some blends or rounds on the inside here as well. And now let's try and shell it out. Select the back face, select the thickness, in this case 0.06, and hit the green check mark. Now if you're getting those little lines in the center, or if you're not, don't worry about them. They're selected over here under display filters. That's the axis display. You can turn those off if you don't want to see those. There's some other options in there too. Under here we have the ability to shaded with reflections. Okay, that might make it look a little nicer if you prefer that. There's shading with edges, or just plain shading, or wireframe, or hidden lines. So you can select which one you prefer. If you want to change the colors of things, that's under the render. And you'll see appearance gallery. Hit the little arrow underneath it, and you can select from different colors. Now you could select individual faces. You have to hold Control. Circles are broken up into 2 tabs, or you can select the whole face. And then if you middle click a couple times, they turn that color. You could also go to Appearance Gallery, select gold if you want to see it all in gold. And then over here, instead of, this is a filter down here. Now you can't see it, it went off the edge, but there's all surface, quilt, internet surface, or intent surface, or part. If you select part from the options, that allows you to select the whole part, and you can select it. Click on it with the paintbrush, and the middle click, and it changes the whole part, with the exception of the 2 red holes, because those are the individual faces, which trump the whole part option. You could also do a render window. Click on render window, and it will give you a photorealistic rendering. There's also render setup, which brings up some options for the quality, like you could change it from draft to high quality. Depending upon your computer, some of these might slow it down considerably when you're trying to render, but there's a number of options. If you turn on global illumination and things like that, these take up a lot of system resources and can take literally minutes, if not hours, to render. So you might want to be careful with that. There's Photolux or Photo Render. The Photolux is the higher quality. Just hit close, and now try render window again, and it should come out a little bit cleaner. You could turn on perspective view, and that gives you vanishing point, much like a camera. If you have something on your desk and you take a picture of it, it's never perfectly square. You get that perspective like it's a vanishing point. Then click on scene over here, and it brings up the scene editor. And some of the scenes you'll see in here you could choose from. Honestly, for a portfolio piece, some of the more basic ones look best, like the Photolux Studio Hard. Hit close, and then render it again. And here, look at that. That looks just excellent. That's a great portfolio piece. If you want to save these off, there's a couple things you could do. Actually, in this case, I usually just do an Alt, hold the Alt key down on your keyboard, and hit the print screen, which is right upper right corner of your keys there. And you could then drop it into a Word document, and it's great for putting together a portfolio or put it into a PowerPoint. There is a way to save it off, which we'll get into later on if you wanted to create a very high quality image. Okay, and that finishes this exercise.